Hey guys, what's up and welcome back to Toe Tags Metal Reviews, and today we're giving you guys our review of Death Above Life by Orbit Culture. So here we are now going to review this album and give our scores. So I'm gonna just piggyback off something I talked about last week and say this pacing is great. They did a great job with the pacing of this album. I think they got it right. Like I said last week, we were concerned about the album based on the way they released the singles. And then hearing them all on the album together, it's like, oh wow, this actually flows really well from track to track. It doesn't get to the point where it's just like one thing over and over. It's got that roller coaster wave effect, whatever you want to call it, that actually makes the album engaging the entire way through. So no, not every song is like the best song ever, but even songs that I'm not huge on, I can still enjoy just for the fact that they fit well in the record. You know, so for example, a song like, where is it? I think I had a note on that. I think it was Inside the Waves. So that song might not be my favorite on the record, but it serves a purpose. So being between Bloodhound and the Tales of War, it breaks up the pace between those songs. So both of those are pretty intense songs, especially Bloodhound. That song's crazy. That's probably one of my favorites. Well, both Bloodhound and the Tales of War are my favorites on the record. But so for me, like I could hear them back to back and I wouldn't care. But considering the pace of the record, I think it fits that Inside the Waves is between them to kind of give a bit more of a melodic thing going on between the more intense ones. Though the Tales of War, I remember loving when I first heard it. And that was when we reacted to it. But even like after a week, I still love it. And I think that song sums up the album really well. I feel like everything this album has to offer is collected within that song. The epic moments, the emotional stuff, the fast grooves, the kind of harder hitting stuff. Like it's kind of got a little bit of everything in there. But I would still rank it on the more intense side of the record. So it fits being after Inside the Waves, but Bloodhound is more so like the super crazy, intense, like it's the open eye of the album. If you remember Open Eye from Ninja, being like, whoa, here we go, like firing on all cylinders. So I think the pacing's really good, and that's a good example of it. It's like that throughout the whole album. That being said, I think Inferna is a good and effective opening track. I kind of feel it's a tad bit long for what it is. That being said, I love the epic build. I think this band's gotten pretty good at that. I know they had some pretty good songs like that on the last record. But yeah, the big moment near the end with the chorus at the end of Inferno is pretty cool. And even just like the vocals, like he's really like pushing with it near the end of that song. And I think that's pretty cool. That being said, I did still find myself more excited to get to Bloodhound because that song is still that good. I think one thing that really does set it apart is how they handle the chorus rhythmically. And I still think that kind of loose Slipknot comparison stands. Like after hearing the song for an entire week, I could still see that resemblance.
Okay.
But yeah, love that song. I mentioned I still love the Tales of War. I remember being iffy on Hydra when it dropped as a single, but it fits better after the Tales of War, which is once again a comment as to how good the pacing is of this record. Is that songs that I might not have been huge on just hearing on their own, I can now appreciate a little bit more by hearing their context of the album.
Yeah.
Which is why we always talk about that in reactions, you know, or even in first impressions, we always bring that up because it makes a difference.
Yep.
Hearing a song on its own is one thing. If you love it off the jump, that's amazing.
Yep.
If not, it can grow on you, not only just from time, because that's a big thing as well.
Yep.
But just from how it functions with other songs around it.
Exactly.
And I think this album's a really good example of how to appreciate songs for that, just because of that alone. Now, I guess there's two other tracks I had notes for. The Path I Walk, I think, is a really, really good ending. I think the fact that it's basically the whole song is the build, I think is cool. It's a good mix-up. I think it's an interesting way to end the record. You know, I think it kind of reflects the vibe of the first track a little bit, but I think it carries a really good weight for it. It helps with the pacing of the album once again. It's not necessarily like my favorite song on the record, but I do really like what it does for the album. I don't know. I think it's good. I liked it. I think it was a good and effective ending, and I feel like the fact that the band can do that and say like, no, for this one, let's just make it the build and then that's it, shows that they have the creative muscles to flex and try some different things. And that's what I'd like to see this band do even more. Because I think this band is in a pretty comfortable pocket of writing. We got into them 5 years ago when they dropped Ninja, and I would say, and they've had releases before then that I haven't listened to. Yeah. But I feel that they, and maybe that's just my perspective, or even our perspective of getting into them at that time, but they kind of really started to get more traction, attention, and blowing up with that album, right?
I think so.
So I think they've gotten a bit comfortable with that style of writing and sound, but it's the kind of band that they do what they do and it sounds good. But I know through a few songs here and there, including The Path I Walk, that they can really mix things up and change things. Yeah. And I think they can
doing that more.
I want to see it more because I think they can be pretty comfortable doing that, and I think it would really elevate their sound more. Because imagine if it's like, this is the Orbit Culture sound they've had for a while. It's a really, really good sound. They sound awesome. And look what they're doing now. Yeah. You know, if they did even more, like, oh wow, look at them do that song, or look at them try that, or incorporate this sound or this instrumentation. Like, yeah, they have, even though they've dropped 3 albums with this kind of general sound, and they've blown up with Ninja, I think like there's so much more room to grow on an already strong foundation of a sound. Last note I'm gonna say about a song. The double kick going for that long in the second chorus and Neural Collapse is both awesome and very funny because it's just still going. And so I laugh, but it also sounds really cool. I think that song has really, really good energy. I like that one as well. And that's near the end of the record.
Yeah, so you did say a lot of things that I can totally agree with. You know, we did a bunch of reactions and we had some concerns. One of mine was all these reactions, these videos, or these songs are all kind of, I don't want to say they sound the same because they don't. They have distinct differences, but they have the same kind of energy, the same kind of vibe. And that was one of my concerns, is the whole album going to be like that? And throughout the week, I was feeling a little bit fatigued because I felt like, yeah, all the songs kind of are like that, with the exception of 3 tracks that I felt stood out in different ways. So those 3 tracks, Bloodhound obviously is one of them. It was a highlight for me at the beginning of the week. I will say though that through the week, it started slipping on me a bit. I didn't like it as much later in the week as I did early in the week. It just kind of, I don't know, it kind of was losing its power on me. The second track, which I also mentioned in our first impressions, is The Storm, which I said to me sounded like an Amon Amarth song. And at this point, after listening to it several times through the week, I couldn't agree with myself more. I think this very much so sounds like an Amon Amarth song. And it almost feels like Orbit Culture is doing a cover of Amon Amarth or something to those effects, because that song really, really stands out to me. It really, it almost sounds like a different band or Orbit Culture really trying a different style. And to me, that's the kind of thing you were just talking about, where just doing that little extra thing brings, it's like a rejuvenation to the sound of the band. And then the third song that stands out, obviously, is The Path I Walk. Because it is a ballad, you don't hear that a lot from this band, if ever. And I feel like the highlight of this song for me was hearing Nicholas's voice a little bit more clear. He's got a cool raspiness to his voice. Yeah. I do like it, but it's a lot of times it's hidden by the music. They're an aggressive band. They got a lot of double bass going and stuff like that. When the music's more pulled back and more, reserved because it's a ballad, you hear his voice a lot more, and I really appreciate that. He sounds really good. Now, as far as the song as a whole, for me, I don't think it really hit the spot it intended to hit. And I think there's a lot of people out there that probably think this is a fantastic ballad and it's really well done and stuff like that. And I'm not saying it isn't, but for me, it just didn't hit the mark. And there's other ballads that, metal ballads I listen to. The most famous one's probably Fade to Black by Metallica. For me, that's an example of a ballad that, to me, hits the mark, right? This one, for me, didn't. So it kind of left me feeling like I wanted more, like there was a bit of an empty void there. So as I was listening to the album, those 3 songs kept standing out to me. All the other songs kept feeling like they could have been switched. It wouldn't matter. They could have been taken out or added. Didn't matter. it didn't feel like any of the other songs really had a solid, hardcore purpose on the album. They were just there to be there. And then I started thinking, maybe I'm just not in the mood for this, right? Maybe I'm just having one of those days where over culture's not my thing. Yeah. So I thought, you know what, I'm gonna put on Nisha and see how I feel about that. So I put that on and I loved it. Nisha slaps. And then I started thinking, this is deja vu. I had this exact same thing when we reviewed Descent. I went through that week thinking that I was getting bored of this album, I was getting tired of it, and go back and watch that review. I said these exact things. I said I went and checked out Nisha, I like that album, and that Descent was kind of disappointing for me. So it was weird to kind of just discover that parallel like organically like that. But that's what happened. You mentioned Inferno being a good intro track. I agree, it's a good intro track. But you also mentioned that it felt kind of long. I have notes of the same thing. I feel like the song kind of drags a little bit. It's 6 minutes and 43 seconds long, which is not their longest song by any means. But for an intro track, I feel like intro tracks should be a little bit on the shorter side. I feel like intro tracks kind of are like the introduction to the album. They should never drag on.
It kind of depends on what you're going for, right?
It can depend on what you're going for.
I think in this case, it's like we have this epic opening and an epic end to bookend it, but I just feel like as an opening to the album for what it doesn't need to be that long.
It doesn't.
Whereas, you know, there's other albums where it's like they put a longer song at the start and it kind of just works. You know?
It can work. I'm not saying it never works, but for me, like a perfect album for me has an intro song that's maybe like 3 to 4 minutes. Song number 2 is always the banger, like the heavy banger. And then usually around track 4 or track 5 is where you have a cool down song or a ballady type song. Yeah. And everything else after that is like give or take. That's kind of how I would structure an album. So this one having a long song at the beginning kind of put a bad taste in my mouth right off the start, although it's a decent song. So it's like, it's kind of acceptable. But then after Bloodhound, the next several songs, Inside the Waves, Tales of War, Hydra, Nerve, Death Above Life, I'd probably give a little bit of an edge to the other songs. And it's for an odd reason. And I don't know if anybody will ever get this or understand what I mean by this, but the rhythm in this song, there's part of this guitar rhythm that reminds me of Get Low by Lil Jon. And every time it came on, I would start singing Get Low by Lil Jon. And the lyrics match perfectly, although the tempo is different, but you can sing the lyrics along with it, and it matches perfectly. And if you get it, you get it. If you don't, you don't. But I thought that was a fun song for that reason, because I was making that really odd, weird connection. And I would just look forward to that song coming on just so I can do that.
It is really funny when stuff like overlaps like that.
Yeah.
Like I think there was one, I don't remember what album this was. There was a song that reminded you of MDK by Brother Lin Chung.
Murder, Death, Kill. Yeah.
Yeah.
That was a couple months ago.
Yeah, but like that kind of thing, right?
Yeah.
Like that weird overlap where it's like, wow, this kind of works.
You see those, sometimes you'll see like YouTubers or whatever, they'll do like mashups, song mashups of like two completely different things. Like I saw Rock Lobster and Raining Blood smashed together or something like that. I think you could do that with this song, Death Above Life, and then Get Low by Lil Jon. You could probably mash them together and make a pretty cool, whatever kind of track. So yeah, overall, I mean, I like Orbit Culture. I think this band's great. I think Christopher's drumming is phenomenal on this album. I think this guy's, I would say underrated because I never hear anybody talking about him, but he's very busy. He does a lot of really cool stuff. And, you know, he's, I'm sure a lot of us are fans of double bass. Obviously, we're here for a reason. But I feel like he really has a knack for turning it on when it really is going to be effective and adding in the little spurts here and there and just doing a lot of cool stuff with his feet. And I really like that. So his drumming's very intense and dynamic.
He's a very busy player, but not too busy. You know what I mean?
Yeah, no, it's not like Archspire or anything like that. Like it's not like super crazy or rapid, but
I mean not even in like that sense. It's more so like really busy, lots of stuff going on, but doesn't overfill any space. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Can leave space when necessary,
Breathes.
but still there's a lot happening and a lot of consistent stuff. Phenomenal foot chops for how much he's doing with that.
Yeah. So Death Above Life. I think I'm ready to rate it.
I guess one more thing I wanted to kind of piggyback on that you said about the vocals. I do like that you can hear more of the singing in the cleans in The Path I Walk. Yeah. Because he does have that kind of Hetfield rasp that you always hear. So it's nice to hear that kind of turned off for a little bit, just to be like, just to hear more dynamic in the melodic vocal performance.
he gets a lot of Hetfield comparisons, and I often wonder if he likes that or not. Because I try not to make that comparison only because like I hear it all the time.
It's there.
And it's there. A lot of people have said it. People have mentioned it on this channel, everything like that. But I wonder how he feels about that. Like, does he go, oh yeah, I fucking sound like James Hetfield, and you know, what a compliment? Or is he like, I don't want to be compared to him. I'm trying to do my own thing, but I just happen to sound like that. I kind of wonder that, and who knows?
Yeah, who knows?
But you're not wrong. Yeah, that James Hetfield type of raspiness or that fry, that slight fry in the voice is there for sure. And it sounds good.
It sounds good. It's just cool to hear it toned back.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah, that was my point.
Yeah,
the fact that you can hear it more clearly.
Exactly. So let's rate it.
Okay. So yeah, this was a little bit of a tough one for me, but like I said, I found myself through the week being a little bit bored of this album, other than a few subtle highlights that I would, you know, kind of notice. And even those highlights weren't quite enough for me to even add any songs to my playlist. Now that might change down the line when I give this album more listens, as we do our end of year listens and things like that when we're preparing for that video, because that does happen from time to time. But as it sits right now, after a week of listening, this album unfortunately kind of just didn't impress me. And I felt like it fell along the same lines as Descent, which was another album from these guys that kind of just fell below the bar in my opinion. And to me, Nija is still their magnum opus, the best work they've done to date. And for this, I'm going to match my score from Descent, which was a 4. I'm giving this album a 4. Sorry, that's gonna piss some people off, but I listened to it all week long and that's what I ended up with.
Fair enough. As for myself, I think this album is quite good. I think, like I mentioned multiple times now, the pacing is great. If I were to give an example as an album that's paced really well, this is a good example I could give. I think it goes back and forth in terms of the pacing and the vibe it kind of gives, you know, going the push and pull of the intensity. And I think that there are some bangers on here, and I know this band can produce that really well. They had a few interesting creative decisions. That being said, I feel like they could have experimented a little more, because I kind of found myself feeling a little bit similar that I did with Descent, where it's like, yeah, it's good, and it's got a few really good sparking moments, but overall, it doesn't really push over the threshold, you know? Nija did. That album is consistently great.
Yeah.
Both Descent and this one, solid. So I'm gonna match my Descent score of a 7.
Wow.
And that's what Death Above Life scored. So weird that it just, same scores, different year.
Well, not only that, but we've reviewed this band 3 times, and all 3 times I've got the same score. Toe Tag, 7, 7, 4, 4.
I don't know what's up with that. We've given it the same score each time. Well, anyway, that's all we got for you guys. It's, I guess, nothing new for us in terms of our rating.
I think that goes to show what the band's doing now, though. Like, the band needs to change up what they're doing. I think you were right about what you said, that they have the potential. They show it on this album that they can do different things.
Yeah.
They just need to do more of that. And, you know, they've landed in a pocket. They're getting a little bit stale, and that's becoming problematic.
Yeah, there's a consistency there, but like I said, there's so much room to grow, and I'm excited to see them eventually do that, because I think they're capable of it.
Yeah.
Anyway, guys, that's all we got for you today. Remember to like this video. If you liked it, tell us in the comments below, from the last 3 releases of Orbit Culture, which one's your favorite? And what about the stuff beforehand? I actually haven't listened to anything from pre-Nija, so let us know if any of that stuff is worth checking out. Subscribe if you guys are new to the channel. I'm TV Fish.
I'm Bile Self.
We'll see you guys later.